Hello there. Today I'm fortunate enough to be at the Tuscan estate Sassicaia, possibly Italy's leading wine estate. And the wine I have in my hand here is Sassicaia 2021, which is the current release of that wine. And I'm standing here in the barrel hall with the next vintage aging behind me. So the estate Sassicaia, the name Sassicaia literally translates as field of stones, and that relates to the stony soil of the original vineyards here, planted in the 1940s by the Marchese, Incisa, della Rocchetta, at a stage where he sort of what started out almost as a hobby, because he was originally from Piedmont. He'd drunk lots of Bordeaux wines and loved styles of wines that could be aged, particularly of Bordeaux. So he decided that he would try growing Cabernet Sauvignon here in Bolgheri, in the Maremma district, where nobody else had tried this before. And he managed to find on his 2,500 hectare estate a vineyard at about 400 metres above sea level that was actually cool enough that the climate resembled Bordeaux, and where the soil types were sufficiently like Bordeaux that he could plant Cabernet Sauvignon. Now, it appears that the locals all thought he was completely mad. They didn't like the style of wine. It didn't fit with the sort of the probably slightly sweet red wines they made that had no tannins, no structure. Instead, the Marchese was making a wine that needed aging. And in fact, he only made the wine for his family up until probably the late 1960s, 1968 is the first commercialisation. But once Sassicaia hits the market, as a simple vino da tavola, simple table wine, it very quickly gains legendary status, to the extent that it now has its own DOC for Bolgheri Sassicaia. So as I say, the wine is predominantly Cabernet Sauvignon, with a tiny amount of Cabernet Franc in there. In 2021 it was 98% Cabernet Sauvignon and 8% Cabernet Franc. It's been aged in oak for about 2 years and has been released on the market very recently. So let's have a look at it and see what we make of it. I mean, the first thing to say is you've got a deep, dark ruby red with just the slightest hint of a purple hue, but only just. The wine is by no means opaque. It's probably a medium depth of colour, to be honest. As I swirl it, it's got 14% alcohol. It's producing some quite pronounced tears on the side of the glass. The aromas. Now, the aromas are quite restrained. They're quite enigmatic. There's lots of delicate notes, and it does take a while to open up. So underlying this, there's a really delicate, slightly spicy red raspberry note. There are hints of tertiary development, sort of perhaps touches of forest floor, dried leaves, that sort of thing. But the fruit is more of a red fruit side of things. And there are just hints of earthiness and truffle. Everything is so restrained, very, very elegant. Nothing stands out too much from it. There's not an obvious sort of cedary oak on the nose. So let's have a taste. On the palate, the wine has an incredibly fine structure and really quite fresh acidity. And the two of those are creating a mouth-watering effect. I'm getting a sort of a spicy, again, red raspberry note at the beginning of the wine. That's being followed slowly by sort of slightly earthy, slightly truffle notes as they develop. There's clearly cedary oak there, but it doesn't stand out at all. In fact, it almost sort of just seems to sit subtly with sort of slight hints of vanilla and very tiny hints of cedar alongside the beautiful, delicate fruit. There's nothing here that's huge. The tannins are so fine, they're so supple. The flavours are very long, they're lasting beautifully. Just the freshness that carries on at the finish. Everything is beautifully well balanced. But at the same time, there's a tightness, there's a firmness. There are notes of fennel, there are slight touches of almost sort of herby garrigue notes. Garrigue would be a French term obviously, but you know, it's something to do with that wild vegetation, sort of lavender and rosemary and those sort of notes in the, almost in the atmosphere surrounding the wine. And it just seems to exude. There's something ever so slightly wild and yet so completely refined about this wine. This is still an incredibly young wine, and the only reason for drinking it now is to see what it might develop into. And I think that the closed nature of this probably suggests that you shouldn't really come back to it for about 10 years. And then you'll start to see an increasing development and elegance. And you know, this is a wine you should be able to keep in your cellar for decades. So thank you very much for joining me. I do hope you've enjoyed the tasting. Do please, if you like it, press the like button. Do please consider signing up and subscribing to our channel. It would be fantastic to have your support. If you have any comments, please leave those in the comments box below. I'll leave a link so that you can follow that to the Wine Searcher website, to our page there about this vintage of Sassicaia, so you can see pricing, you can see availability, you can see critics' notes and other information on the background of the wine there. So thank you again for joining us. Do please come and join us again soon. Bye for now.